Hey guys, my name is Mio, and welcome to episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I'll give my humble opinion on them. To get the format is out of the way real quick, if you'd like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question that comes from Mason, and it is, with all of the monetization in Siege, do you think that we're getting more out of it? I feel disappointed with these new seasons compared to year one, where we were getting new operators, weapons, and maps, and now we just get new operators. Well, when you put it like that, it's hard to disagree. You were 100% right here. When Rainbow Six Siege first came out, Ubisoft was pumping out the content. We got 4 new maps every single year, 8 new operators, which obviously hasn't changed, but every single one of those operators was getting brand new weapons to play around with, which was changing the way that we played the game. We were getting 4 seasonal skins, if memory serves. They've been dropping it down to 2 lately for whatever reason. And all the while, they were adding in new secondary gadgets like the impact nade. We were getting new attachments along the way as well. Those first couple of years was very content rich for Rainbow Six Siege, especially considering that Ubisoft has slowly and steadily increased the amount of ways to monetize the game. You would think that with all that increased revenue that they would be able to use some of that to improve the game in the long run. Now, the justification that Ubisoft has given for why they decided to do this is they're trying to create an environment that is easier for newer players to get involved. If every single year they brought in 4 new maps, it would just get to the point where it's completely overwhelming for anyone who was just getting started. There is already a mountain amount of content, and some people would argue that we're already past this point because there is so much to learn. All the different angles and strategies that you have to get on all of these maps, you're gonna have to spend hundreds and hundreds of hours just to be comfortable on all of it, and just adding more and more is just gonna be a bit too much. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's all fine and good, but if they're not spending their resources on bringing us new content, at least with maps and weapons, then they must be allocating that to somewhere else to bring us content in some other capacity. And that is where I think that Ubisoft could do better. Yes, there are those seasonal events that can be a lot of fun, like the Rainbow Six Siege's Magic, the Wild West, and the recent Halloween event. Those are really cool, but there's no way you can convince me that they take all that long to actually create compared to something like a brand new map. And so where are these developers' time and resources being spent compared to what we were getting before? Now, with all that being said though, the one thing I do have to praise Ubisoft on is that even though we're not really getting a lot of new maps, they are reworking old ones, and I think that that was a fantastic decision on their part, especially considering they've admitted that there's already plenty of content map-wise. To go back and try to make the old maps more competitive seems like a no-brainer, and I think they've done a really good job there. Canal Cafe and Theme Park, I think, are vastly more competitive and just simply a lot more fun. Canal in particular went from being one of my least favorite maps, it just really wasn't all that great, to honestly one that I look forward to when it comes into my ranked rotation. Yes, it has its problems, it's not perfect, but it's way better than it was before. All in all though, I do understand where you're coming from, and to some extent, I share your frustration, especially considering that Ubisoft has added in so many ways of monetizing this game. You would think that we'd be getting more as a community, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like they're kind of just in cruise mode right now, just not necessarily doing the bare minimum, but I just feel like they could be doing so much more. And so let me know what you guys think on this topic. Is there something in particular that you want Ubisoft to be adding to Rainbow Six Siege? Do you think they're doing a good job right now? Is there any way that you would like to see the game improved? Give me your guys' thoughts down below. The next one is, imagine the ability for an operator with the Overkill perk in COD series having 2 main weapons. What do you think about this? So this is an idea that I've been hearing bounced around lately ever since the new COD came out, where we would have a brand new operator that essentially just had access to 2 primary weapons. The reason why I haven't really been sold on it though is for a couple of reasons. The first one is that really the only way that this operator would be viable is if they had 2 amazing primary weapons. If they don't have any other gadget associated with them, those weapons need to be phenomenal. Like, they need to be some of the best in the game. Imagine if this character had access to something like the F2 for Twitch, and then a close range weapon like a shotty or something that excels in those close encounter situations. That would be a pretty unstoppable combination. Granted, they don't have any other gadget that would allow them to assist them, but really, Rainbow Six Siege is about, can you use use those primary weapons effectively. And if you had something that allow you to excel in pretty much all situations, that could be a powerful combination. Now, the reason why I don't like that very concept is that it's an incredibly selfish operator. Usually this game is about teamwork. I know that's not entirely true for every single one of the characters in the game right now, but by and large, if you want to be successful, you need to use your gadget in tandem with your teammates to be successful. This character is entirely selfish. They would bring literally nothing to their team other than just being a great way at taking out other players, which honestly, there's already a lot of those operators in the game that have a gadget that can bring something more. Now, one way they could work around this is by maybe giving them a really weak primary gadget so that they have at least something that they bring to the offensive side other than just two primary weapons. That could be one way of trying to bring in some teamwork dynamic. But even then, they run the risk of just making someone that is a bit too strong because obviously they have two awesome primary weapons. And so all in all, even though I realize that there are a lot of people out there that like the idea of this because I've gotten many suggestions along these lines, I'm not really one of them. The next question comes from Dayton, and it is, should Ubisoft change Dokubi's gadget to be an area of effect around her instead of a global effect? I am entirely okay with that idea. This is something that I assumed that Ubisoft was going to do eventually, especially after they reworked Lion a couple of seasons ago. Making it so that you needed to be in their general vicinity has a lot of benefits. It forces you to actually be with your team when they're trying to root out a roamer, for example. This would also mean that if you are someone who does get called by a Dokubi, you know that she's relatively nearby, you would still want the AoE effect to be somewhat large. You don't need to be directly next to the operator for them to get called, but it would give you an idea that players are in your vicinity, and as a defender, you can respond accordingly. I just think that that would be a much better dynamic. Having your phone get rang across the map, and there's nothing that you can do about it other than be trying to sit next to a mute jammer, because that really is the only counter right now. I think having something like this would be a better way of going about it. Admittedly, though, this might be too much of a nerf to Dokubi. We wouldn't really know unless we were able to play around with this change for a couple of seasons. And so I like the idea. I think that this would be a really cool way of trying to balance out these global operators that have seemed to be a bit tricky for Ubisoft to balance, and this could be one way they go about it. The next one comes from Daniel, and it is, what if whenever you start a plant and time is up, you can cancel the plant, but only get 5 to 10 seconds to respond, and you must do so because you are no longer able to restart the plants. So if I'm understanding you right, essentially what you mean is that if the time runner is completely out on offense, you go for the plants and then you stop because you hear someone running towards you, it will then give you 5 to 10 seconds to then respond to what's happening, even though the time limit has run out. I get why you want this. Like, I fully understand. I've been in that situation numerous times, but honestly, that is entirely the design between offense and defense. Defenders won in that situation. They ran out the clock, they were slowing you down. If you wanted those extra 5 to 10 seconds, then you needed to start to plant 5 to 10 seconds a little bit sooner. The very end of a round, there is a lot of strategy going on. If it's a 1v1 situation, there's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. Do I push on in and try to stop the plants? Is he trying to fake me out? Is he waiting for me just around the corner? These are all things that you have to take into consideration. And that's one of the reasons why all of this occurs, is because of the mechanics that are in place right now. If all of a sudden you could go for a fake plant and then that would give you an extra 5 to 10 seconds at your disposal, that would ruin that entire dynamic. This would really shift things more into the favor of the offensive team. Now, you do state that you wouldn't be able to go back and replant the objectives. You couldn't just do this over and over and over again. You'd have to go after the defender after you did something like this. But honestly, that really wouldn't be all that much of a hindrance. By and large, when you're planting, you're going to hear the defender coming loud and clear. You're going to know if they're about to round the corner. And so 5 to 10 seconds is all you're going to need. And so all in all, I don't really think that this is necessary. It would bring in some new dynamics. It it would change things up, but I don't know if it would necessarily be for the better. But yeah, guys, that is what it for today's episode of Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. Do you like the idea of having a limit on global abilities? Do you like the way that they function right now? Let me know your thoughts down below. As always, if you'd like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until next time, guys, have a good one and take it easy.